Welcome to another Secret Influence TV interview. I'm Nick Ronald, and on Secret Influence TV, I interview people who have a story to tell, some expertise to share, or a message that they want to tell the world. I believe that influencing is one of the most important skills in life. If you want to be able to have success in business or your career, you need to be able to influence others, to listen to you, to take on board what you want them to do, and have a positive influence, to persuade people. So if you please do subscribe to my channel and be notified of other upcoming interviews. Today I am interviewing Tom Thompson, who has a very powerful message to share about his passion in life. So Tom is a tree consultant, a speaker, activist on the value and benefits of trees and our urban forest. Welcome, Tom, to Secret Influence TV.
Thank you, Nick. Glad to be here.
So just to start off, how would you just describe what you do at the moment for a living in, say, 2 or 3 sentences?
Well, my day job. Well,
day job. Let's start with your day job.
Start with the day job. I inspect trees and produce reports that will get clients planning permission, house purchase completion if they're buying a property, or address their insurance or duty of care requirements. In a nutshell, that's what I do.
Excellent. And your job very much so relates to what we're going to be talking about today, which is obviously your passion for trees and difference they can make to people. When and how did your sort of belief in the power of trees, when did it start?
I became consciously aware of it a few years ago after doing some personal development, some NLP training and some personal empowerment training, and realizing that I needed to follow my course and that I actually had a life's purpose. And then I looked back and saw that it had been there all my life, really. And there was this kind of period where I was looking for my life purpose, and I was going, oh, where is it? What is it? And yeah, it was trees. And I'd been working with trees. I've been working in trees, and I've been playing and spending my free time in and around trees all my life. And yeah, it's a no-brainer, really. But yeah, you've just got to stop looking sometimes to see what's right in front of you.
So we all know trees are good for the environment. They breathe in, carbon dioxide, breathe oxygen. They're good for the pollution. But there's so much more to it, isn't it? Tell me, why trees are so important to, not just people's well-being but the environment and even the economy. Explain to people who aren't aware.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that trees are amazing. They're just incredible. The more I learn about them, the more they amaze me. And they're good for our health, our wealth, and our well-being. And that's one of the talks that I do. So for our health, our physical health, they give us oxygen, which is kind of vital for us as mammals to exist. And so they breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. Breathes kind of not an actual term, but it's kind of a humanization of it. But yeah, they respire oxygen and we use that. But they do so much more. That they take in pollution and lock it away. So not just locking carbon away in their wood, but they're absorbing pollution and they're taking it out of the air. So we're not breathing that in. They're cooling the air. So that's good for our health as well. So particularly in urban environments, we get what's called an urban heat island, where it just heats up, and where we've got so much concrete. Like London is basically a big lump of concrete. The sun beats down on it, it heats it up, and it stores that energy and it slowly releases it. That's not such a problem in winter in this country, but in the tropical countries it happens all year round in their cities. In summer it's a problem for us in this country, because I remember the storage heating, the Economy 7. You'd have these breeze blocks that you'd heat up at night, cheap electricity. I think they're still about, but they're not so popular now. So you'd heat them up at night, they'd get hot, store that energy, and slowly release it in the winter during the day. And that's what London's doing. And that's not good for us. So in a heat wave, people die of the heat. But what they actually die of is heart attacks, because they can't cope, their heart can't cope with pumping the blood around to try and cool them down. And it's fine, you can do it during the day, but your heart needs to have a rest at night. And it's not, if it's a hot night, you've got a heat wave period, it's on the go all the time. So it has a major impact on our physical health, particularly people who are overweight or not so physically fit, but out of condition. So yeah, massive impact on our physical health, but also our mental health. So the Japanese have been studying this for years now, that they have people in the forests and they put sensors on them and they measure their cortisol levels, and it goes down because they're in a forest. And yeah, thank goodness for the Japanese telling us that forests relax us, because we haven't figured that one out for ourselves. But there's scientists, they've measured it, and that's what the doubters or the naysayers will throw in our face if we can't prove it. So it has a physical effect. It reduces our cortisol levels, which has a mental effect. It improves our mental well-being. It reduces stress levels, and it's the pheromones in the trees that help to do that. There's still more science going on. So it's not just it looks nice, it's cooler, it makes us feel better. There's also a chemical reaction. If you think back to how we've evolved, there's nursery rhymes, old stories about wolves and forests, so we're a little bit scared of it. But back beyond that, we used to live in the forest, and that used to offer us protection, and we used to live in and amongst the trees, and we've got this relationship with it. And people, myself included, I lost sight of that. I wanted to go to the city and get involved in nightlife when I was younger, but I became aware of it a few years ago. I think most people became aware of it during the lockdown. It's taken away from them. They're literally breaking out of lockdown to go and sit in parks and get close to nature, or just noticing the 1 hour's walk they're allowed a day, just noticing birds and noticing a tree outside their house that had been there for like 50 years. And, oh wow, I didn't see that before. But just really appreciating it, and so it became quite relevant and quite real for a lot of people.
I mean, I'm one of these people who I enjoy being around trees, enjoy being in nature, but I genuinely never knew, there's this sort of science behind it, and there's been the studies behind it, showing that, like you said about the pheromones and the soak up the heat. I never knew about. It's quite fascinating. So have you just learned this, obviously, over the years, building up your knowledge, and I guess it's like you say, a lot of research being done. Is it something you're just always learning new things about it?
Absolutely. I mean, research is ongoing. I'm a tree consultant. I call myself a tree consultant because nobody can pronounce what my title is. It's arboricultural consultant. And people struggle with that, and they go arbor what? And some of them go arborologist is my favorite, because that's an arboriculturalist and an ecologist, I think, and they've fused us together. But I keep it simple. I'm a tree consultant, but arboriculture as a science is very, very young. There's a guy called Shigo. He's an American guy, kind of founded it in the 70s. We'd got silviculture and forestry plantations obviously before that, but the real study of trees and tree safety and how to manage them in and around people and property started in the 70s, and it really took off in the 90s, and it's still going now. We're still finding out new things about how they're helping us, how they interact with fungi and soil, and it's an ongoing lifelong learning. I think definitely. We're both committed to that in terms of personal development, but obviously also for professional development for me. It's by no means sorted yet. We're still discovering, as an industry, still discovering stuff almost on a daily basis.
One thing I still wonder is the answer, say, in a city like London, is it, have more park space or more? For example, where I live in Barnet, they once a couple of years ago they started planting trees in the on the pavements. They on the streets. They dug up holes in the pavement and planted more. Is the answer to more bigger park spaces, or do you think more trees actually on the streets amongst the concrete? Is there, or a bit of both? What do you think?
Both, definitely both. I think we need trees on all of our streets. I've adopted a Bill Gates quote where he wanted to see a computer in every house, or believed he would see a computer in every house. I want to see a tree in every garden and along every road and street and track. And I think we need that. That will help with pollution. And even when we get electric cars, there will still be some pollution from brake dust and tire dust until we solve that problem. It will help with water runoff, because of flooding is another issue that trees are part of the solution. They're not the only answer, but they're part of the solution. So if you have trees along a road, that will help to absorb some of that. But also we need parks and larger areas of trees. You get more biodiversity if it's just a natural area. But biodiversity is another key thing that we're aware of now as a country, and the government's put legislation in. So all new housing has to have that consideration and show a biodiversity net gain, how they're going to add biodiversity. And the easiest way of doing that is to plant more trees, because they're bigger than shrubs and grass, and they're three-dimensional, and they host a huge amount of different wildlife.
That leads my next question. You're planning to, I think you're for an upcoming book, Treeconomy, and you've talked about before when I've heard you speak about the how trees can help the economy, or if you've got a property, it can add value. Tell me a bit about that side of things.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got your book out already. My book's been upcoming for far too long now. If only there'd been a period of inactivity or lockdown where I could have finished it. But I was working through the lockdown. The premise is that trees add value and add money. They add value to house prices. If someone's buying a property and they're getting a peri-urban or suburban property, or even a rural property, and it's got trees around it, that's called a mature landscape in estate agent terms, and that adds around about 10% to the value of the property. And it's hard to compare like for like, but similar size houses in similar locations with trees and without trees. And this is research. I mean, this research goes back to the 70s and 80s, but it's still current research that bears this out as well. People pay for that seclusion, for that privacy, for that serenity, or just for the calmness, or maybe for the privacy. I don't know what they want to get up to behind these green walls or whatever. But yeah, and often people buy these properties and they pay the extra, probably not realizing it, and then they start cutting trees down to put garages in, or extra parking, or an extension. Sure. And I get that people want to add value to their property, so improve it, but you can still do that by doing different building techniques, maybe piled foundations, maybe building it further away from the tree. You can still add value in structure to your property and retain the screen, and people aren't necessarily aware of that.
It is a lot of what you want to achieve. Is it around awareness? Is that the key thing? Just make people aware of these issues, so that will change his behavior, by being more aware, in this example.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick, I'm an activist. I only realized I was an activist a couple of weeks ago on a mastermind group, and that's because we had a guest speaker who was giving us some tips on how to be a better speaker and get to our audience, and she really didn't understand what I was doing. And most of the people in the group had a presentation, a pitch, and it was related to their day job, and at the end of it they sold their service. And mine's a little bit more subtle than that. So I'm promoting my cause, which is promoting the value and benefits of trees. And when I get some fame and exposure, it will obviously lead on to more business, because there's me, my personal brand, and there's my business, and people will be aware of it. So I will get more business, but I'm not directly promoting that. I'm promoting the value of trees, just because that's something that resonates with me. That's my mission, if you like. And I wasn't sure I was an activist when she told me. I was quite offended. And the host of the mastermind said, "Oh, try to not really calm it down, but just to soften it a bit," and said, "Oh yeah, you don't have to be a campaigner that's gluing yourself to the motorway or the petrol pumps. And that was what I was thinking. I think, no, I'm not, but I am trying to change something, to create a movement, to influence people like yourself, but in a positive way.
Sure.
And I admire Greta for what she does, but I don't believe you're going to influence people by shouting at them and telling them they're wrong. And I don't believe you're going to influence people in the long run by gluing yourself to the road and pissing them off, basically, because they're late for work. I think we've got to educate them. I think we've got to entertain them to a degree. Have a pitch that you can engage with them. You can have a chat and still get your point of view across. Educate people and inform them, but in an interesting way, I think.
Well, yeah. What I like about your approach is, you do have a lot of research and, to back up what you say, and from so many different angles. So, it's, everyone can relate to, or everyone wants to improve their well-being and their mental health, but also, the economy on a personal level and a wider level, so I think, having that big picture of all, how all the different ways, I think, backed up by research is a very powerful thing. So I mean, one other thing is, I think you're the world's first treepreneur I think I've ever heard of, and I think you're obviously, you encompass trees into your business as well as your passion and your cause. I mean, how do you try and influence people with your message? Do you use, I know you mentioned public speaking, do you use social media? What's your sort of approach? You're working a book, how do you try and get your message out there?
I do social media, but I don't do it very well. I do my own social media, and particularly with Facebook, I have a lot of tree pictures on there. I have some jokes on there because I like the humor. I like to engage with people and still get my message across. I've obviously got the business channels. I've got LinkedIn, but I manage it all myself. And really, I think when I want to step up and take this seriously, I think I need to get that managed for me. Sure. I've got a business website and I've got a public speaking website as well. I don't do enough, really. I still haven't finished my book. It keeps changing. I've got to get over this procrastination and need for perfection, because it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be definitely out there. And yeah, public speaking, massive fan of public speaking, and that my public speaking journey is still ongoing. Started before Toastmasters, but it came on a long way with Toastmasters.
How long have you been? Because I know public speaking is one of your, one of your, great skills, and I've seen you speak on stage, and one of your passions. When did you first start? Was it, if you mentioned Toastmasters, how long ago did you first get involved?
Toastmasters was just over 4 years ago now.
Okay.
I went to a meeting this week, and someone asked me, and I had to think back, maybe 4.5, and that was to promote my business. And I always joke about this, and I say, well, I had this massive fear of public speaking, and I'd started my own business, and I needed to get my message out there. I started my business about 8 years ago now, so there was this time in between. But I realized if I wanted to grow my business, I either had to overcome my fear of public speaking, sure, or pay someone else to do my public speaking for me. So my fear of spending money overtook my fear of public speaking, and that got me off. That motivated me, because everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people think, oh, I want to do public speaking. There's always this but or this excuse. Sure. And I overcame that by telling myself it would be cheaper if I did it myself, and no one else would get it, really. Sure. You can share your message with someone and they'll try and deliver it, and it will always be diluted, and you'll think that's not quite what I meant. So I knew the value in doing it myself, and the cost saving as well of not paying someone else to do it. And then it grew from there. Toastmasters, I mean, you're in Toastmasters. It's not the answer to everything, but it's a fantastic grounding. And if you go to more than one club, I was a member at 3 clubs at one point. Wow. You're just doing it that regularly that sure, it's just normal. It's not even, you don't even think of it as public speaking. And as you get roles as a president or VPE, you just have to, you're speaking all the time, and then you just don't think about it in the same way anymore. It's just natural.
Sure.
And yeah, Toastmasters is good for that. I don't think it's very good for selling, for businesses. It does help people who've got jobs and doing presentations. So they deliver a presentation in a better way, but it doesn't really have the selling skills. And that's where speakers are leaders. That's where we met, through new success resources and speakers are leaders. And I love that. I'm not quite as salesy as Harry standing on stage and selling. And I'm not actually, I am selling, but I'm not selling because it's more subtle. I'm promoting something. So I still get a huge amount from that, and I enjoy that. Even more than Toastmasters, I think.
Sure. I agree. I'm a Toastmaster myself, as you said, and also, we've met through speakers and leaders, and we've done success resources, so a lot of overlaps there. And I agree. Toastmasters is a fantastic way of learning how to present well and communicate powerfully, but it's not a sales sort of business persuasion thing so much. So I do agree with you there. So let me think. If you could have anyone as your ideal tree celebrity ambassador, and with a different question here, who would it be?
I think the obvious one would be Sir David Attenborough. I don't think you go far wrong with that. But he's already got a lot of causes, and he's getting on a bit as well. So he probably wants to retire at some point. There are a lot of celebrities that are into nature that promote it. Dame Judi Dench is one. She's been on TV programs on trees.
Okay.
Someone a bit left field is Noel Fitzpatrick, super vet.
Oh, okay.
And I've been to watch him. I don't watch his TV show every week, but I look at it every now and then. And I'm, in a way, I'd like to emulate what he's done in terms of taking animals and humanizing them and having stories. So you've got the story of the family, but you've got the story of the animal as well. So kind of humanizing trees and making it relatable to people. And he likes trees as well. So I went to watch him at the O2 just to see how someone who has sort of similar message can have a large stage show at a rock concert venue, essentially.
Yeah.
And
give you ideas?
Amazing.
Could you see yourself?
Yeah. So maybe I think he's dedicated to animals, so that might water it down. But someone like that, I can't think of anyone else that.
Some good names. Yeah, there's two to start with. My next question, Tom, is, with big issues like, especially environmental issues, sometimes people think, does it make any difference? If I plant a tree in my garden, if I sign a petition, does it make any difference? Obviously, you believe passionately that it does make a difference. Every tree makes a difference, I guess. But if people are cynical, how would you respond? If people, if you're talking, giving out a message, and people are just, it doesn't make a difference.
Absolutely, it doesn't make a difference. And I try to, like yourself and Secret Influencer, you like to relate it to people. So I take people back to the lockdown, so they realize that they did appreciate nature, and then try and take it a step further with the Japanese science, so that it does actually mentally and physically relax people and makes them feel better, and it will add value to their property, and if they have trees around the property, it will reduce the wind speed, which is going to reduce their heating bill in winter, which is obviously a big thing at the moment with the rising cost of fuel. So the biggest heat loss from a building is the wind wicking the heat away from the side of the building. So if you have a tree or a leyland hedge, for argument's sake, not the most visually appealing thing, but if it's breaking that wind up and slowing it down, it's reducing your heat loss. And in summer, if you've got shading on your building, it's going to reduce your air conditioning costs.
Makes sense.
Or
Makes sense.
reduce the temperature of your house so you don't have the risk of heart attack. So to make it on a personal level, and if everyone did that, it would have if everyone did it, it would have a massive effect. But if enough people did it, it would have a positive impact. And it reduces flooding as well. And people are affected by flooding. And we're all affected by flooding, because the people that are flooded can get insured for 2 floods, I think, and then that's it. They don't get insured. But the insurance companies have got to make their money back from somewhere. So they're putting the costs up on everyone else that isn't in a flood zone. So we're all paying for flood. So if we reduce flooding, we will all get a financial benefit and a health benefit and a mental health benefit. I
think when you put it like that, there's, I think it's good to have, those, the big reasons, that can make a difference to the wider world, and then the country level, and then individually. I think that's something that I definitely can relate to. What is there a country that's really leading the way in putting trees first? I mean, you mentioned Japan's done a lot of research. Are they one of the countries that really?
They are up there. They do value their trees. They do look after them. They're not perfect. They invaded Korea and stole all their woods and trees, and they currently own large forestry plantations in New Zealand. So they still, and timber is a renewable resource. I am in favour of using it, but the Japanese kind of look after their own, and they have these forest areas. But they're one of the most capitalistic societies. So it's the pressure between capitalism and the environment and society. One of my favorite places in the world, I've got a few favorite places, and they've all got lots of trees. So New Zealand, British Columbia and Canada, but Singapore is one of my favorite places, and that's a city country, or a small country that's basically very urbanized, but it's massively treed.
Oh, I never realized.
It's famous for it, and I love it, and that would be my example of how we should all be.
That's interesting, because I've not been to Singapore, but in my perception, I always imagine it as a city, as maybe small parks, but very much city place, and don't associate trees really or park world with Singapore at all. It's interesting you say that.
It's a former British colony, and I think it was in 1950, 1956 when it got its independence. And there's a photo of the centre of the city, no trees, nothing, not the whole city, but and then they contrast it with the photo of that place now, which is got some parks and tree-lined streets. But that's the model they've taken for the whole city, and that's what I'd promote that. And other cities are trying to embrace that. There's Australian cities, Sydney, Melbourne, obviously concerned about the heat island effect there. We think we've got it bad in this country. It's 10 times worse over there, and they're trying to address that with trees, not just with trees, but that's a big part of their solution. Absolutely.
And close to home, do you have a favourite part of countryside like in the UK? Any favourite woodland area?
I like the New Forest, but that's not all forest. There's a lot of parkland, a horse area in there. I like I've forgotten the name of there's a yew tree woodland. I was only talking about it yesterday, and the name's just completely gone from my head. But it's in Sussex. It's almost exclusively yew trees, and I like going back to see the woodlands I created when I worked in forest creation. So a lot of those are in the National Forest in the Midlands, Derbyshire, Leicestershire and Staffordshire, but I did work on one in Kent as well. Jeskins used to be Jeskins Farm. It's not a farm anymore. We've taken the Grade 1 farmland and converted it to urban forest and recreational area. not to everyone's taste. There's some farmers think they should still be growing crops there, but it's a fantastic site. It's got a little bit of contours.
Where's that? So where is that, Tom?
It's Cobham. It's just south of Gravesend, near Ebbsfleet. There was a new
I know. Yeah, Kent. Yeah, I know that one.
Created for called Ebbsfleet, and this is across the motorway to the south from there. But this was part of it. I used to work for the Forestry Commission, but it was
I didn't realise.
funded by the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister when John Prescott, when Labour were in, and it was green space created for the population that we're putting in this new town. So yeah, Ebbsfleet is a kind of landmark, but Jeskins project, I think it's just called Jeskins now. Yeah, and that's a good few hectares of orchard, woodlands, and parkland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anywhere with trees, really.
Anywhere with trees. Talk about your or who your intended sort of audience are for your message. I mean, I guess there's individuals who can make a difference, but also I guess politics comes into it. And do you think a lot of these things should be led by the politicians be taking more responsibility to to lead the initiative with more parkland, more green regeneration, more? Do you think is that one of your ideal target audiences in that way?
It is. It's still important, but it's my approach is bottom up.
Okay.
Preaching or speaking to the public and getting enough people to get on board with that message. A lot of my professional organizations are top down, so they want to speak to the politicians. Sure. They're going straight to the top, and a lot of people do that, and a lot of organizations do that, and I think that's flawed, because the tree organizations are doing it, but the housing organizations are doing it, and the road building lobby are doing it as well. And you're always, as a politician, going to get a compromise, because they're going to have three or more different people in their ears and go, right, well, I can't keep everyone happy, and it'll be a fudge. Whereas if you get enough public on board in a certain area or across the country, they're going to vote for the politician. So then they're fearful for their job. So if 51% of a local population are in favour of the environment and taking steps for the environment, not over big business, but the economy is still important, but having a green economy and a sustainable economy. And if 51% of the voting public are in favour of that, then that's what the politicians are going to do.
It's true. No, that's very true.
That's my belief.
Yeah, no, I think the politicians will listen to people if there's enough people, believing in something strong enough. Like you say, their position is fairly precarious at times, and politicians, so if enough people speak out about something, they have to listen. I think that's a good point. That's a good way of looking at it. Just so, to bring our interview to a close now, what's your parting to a call to action to people? What do you give me a couple of things that you'd like people to do after perhaps watching this. People listen and say, it makes sense. I agree. I agree with what Tom's saying. It makes sense. What would you want people to do? What, in a practical way?
Just to be aware and to stop and think. They value nature at some level, because almost everyone craved that during the lockdown. So it's still fresh in their minds. But to do their own, don't just believe it because I've said it, but do their own research, to think that there could be something in what I've said, that trees might add value to their property. So do some research on that. Look into the health benefits, because it's very, very short-sighted that we're all chasing shiny objects and wanting more and more money. That's not necessarily going to make us happy, but just to appreciate nature, to appreciate the value, the intrinsic value that gives us, but also the financial value and the cost savings. Just to be more aware. Follow me. Is this where I promote?
Yes, that was my next question.
Yeah. So
Please
Tom
share your...
Thompson on LinkedIn. I'm Tomo Thompson on Facebook, just because I wanted to get in touch with my army friends when I first went on Facebook 20, 30 years ago, whenever it first came out. But it's the same person. And tomthompson.co.uk is my public speaking website, and arbor-cultural.com or .co.uk is my business website if people are interested in the business side of things. Yeah, I think that's all of my channel. Yeah, I've done LinkedIn, haven't I? Yeah,
you have.
Yeah,
yes,
Tom Thompson. I the more people look for me, the higher up I'll get on that Google search. But yeah, you can find me.